started with a sound that no one in the courtroom would ever forget. A sharp, echoing thud followed by the gasp of an audience that couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Karen Westfield, dressed in a glossy designer suit and dripping with attitude, had done the unthinkable. She had taken off one of her stiletto heels and hurled it straight across Judge Judy's courtroom. The heel hit the wooden bench inches away from where the most feared woman on daytime television sat. Eyes locked, utterly still. For 3 terrifying seconds the room was silent, and then Judy spoke. "Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video." The world would soon call this the moment everything changed, because what Judge Judy said next wasn't anger. It wasn't shock. It was something far colder. A single line that turned a courtroom meltdown into one of the most unforgettable displays of justice ever aired on TV. But here's the thing. The real twist of this story isn't what Karen threw. It's what Judge Judy already knew before she ever lifted that gavel. The cameras caught the throw, but they didn't catch the secret that made Judy wait for this exact moment to expose Karen completely. Before we reveal what Judy said and what secret she was holding back until that very instant, take a second to tell us where you're watching from, because what happens next will make you realize why millions of viewers still replay this moment years later. Hit that subscribe button now, because this story doesn't just show karma, it defines it. The bailiff had already taken a step forward, ready to restrain the furious woman. But Judge Judy raised a single hand, stopping him in his tracks. Her calmness was eerie, the kind that comes from someone who knows they've already won. Karen's chest heaved, her eyes wild, her lips trembling with rage. She tried to speak, to justify what she did, but Judy didn't give her the chance. The judge leaned forward, voice razor-sharp yet perfectly controlled. "You just made your biggest mistake," she said. And that was the first sign that this case, which began with arrogance, was about to end with something far worse than embarrassment. It was about to end in regret. The courtroom was still tense, the echo of that thrown heel hanging in the air like a curse. But the truth was, Karen Westfield's downfall hadn't started with that single moment of rage. It began long before she ever set foot in Judge Judy's courtroom. What the audience didn't see was the arrogance that built up to it, the pattern of entitlement that made this confrontation inevitable. Karen wasn't there for justice. She was there to win, and she believed money, charm, and manipulation would do the job. It started days earlier when she sued her neighbor, a quiet woman named Teresa, over a property line dispute. The truth was embarrassingly simple. Teresa's flower garden, which had been there for years, stretched a few inches into Karen's yard. Instead of a conversation, Karen sent threats, legal letters, loud arguments, and one final act that made her notorious online. She bragged about how she'd crush that woman in court, not realizing that Judge Judy had already seen her type 1,000 times before. When the cameras started rolling, Karen arrived like she owned the place, gold jewelry glittering, designer bag on her arm, that smug half-smile that made the audience uneasy. She spoke before Judy even asked her to. "I'm just here because she refuses to respect property lines," she said, voice dripping with superiority. Judy didn't respond right away. She just studied Karen in the quiet, calculating. That silence was the warning sign. Viewers familiar with Judy's courtroom knew that when she went silent, she was preparing to deliver a verbal demolition. Teresa, the defendant, stood timidly on the opposite side. Simple clothes, nervous smile, trembling hands clutching her papers. She tried to explain that she'd offered to move her garden, but that Karen refused to talk. The audience began to sense the imbalance. One woman chasing peace, the other chasing power. Judy raised a brow. "Ms. Westfield," she said evenly, "do you understand what you're suing for?" Karen's answer came with a scoff. "Of course I do. Property damage," but what happened next showed just how much she didn't understand. Judy reached down, pulled out a document, and held it up. "Then maybe you'd like to explain why this complaint you filed mentions emotional distress and slander." The audience murmured, surprised. Karen blinked rapidly. "Well, she's been talking about me online, making me look bad," she snapped. Judy leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "No, Ms. Westfield, you made yourself look bad." For a moment, the courtroom went still again, the kind of silence that's louder than shouting. Karen tried to defend herself, but her words came out weaker now, stumbling over excuses. Judy didn't need to yell. Her calmness carried the weight of absolute authority. "Do you know what's worse than being wrong, Ms. Westfield?" Judy asked quietly. "Being arrogant and wrong." The crowd reacted with low murmurs, cameras flashing, capturing the moment that would soon flood social media. But Judy wasn't done. She flipped through another page, her tone icy but precise. "You said this garden lowered your home value." Yet your appraiser's report says the opposite. So which story are we going with today? Karen's voice faltered. I didn't read that report myself. Judy smiled thinly. Then maybe you should have before you came in here throwing accusations. The tension was building second by second. Everyone watching could sense that this wasn't just another petty case. It was the setup to something much bigger. Judy's patience was unraveling thread by thread, and Karen didn't even notice. She smirked, rolling her eyes when Teresa spoke again. Oh, please, Karen said loud enough for everyone to hear. She's acting like a victim. It's pathetic. That's when Judy's hand twitched, the smallest movement, the calm before her storm. In the back row, someone whispered, "She's done for." They were right, because Judy had already seen the one document that would completely destroy Karen's credibility. But she didn't reveal it yet. She waited, because in Judge Judy's courtroom, timing is everything. The gavel would come down soon, not on Teresa, not on the garden, but on Karen's pride. And when it did, millions watching from home would cheer. They just didn't know that before the heel flew, Judy had already built the trap that Karen would walk straight into. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses slowly, her expression unreadable. The quiet in the courtroom was suffocating. Every eye was fixed on her, waiting for what would come next. Karen stood there, arms crossed, still clinging to her arrogance like a shield, but her confidence was beginning to crack. For the first time, she realized that Judy wasn't just listening, she was dissecting. Every word, every gesture, every exaggerated sigh had been noted, and now the dissection was about to begin. "Ms. Westfield," Judy began, her tone deceptively calm, "you seem to believe this courtroom operates on your schedule." Karen scoffed. "I'm just trying to explain myself." Judy raised a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. "No, you're trying to talk over me, and that never ends well." The audience murmured in approval, a low ripple of satisfaction. Karen's jaw tightened. "I'm not one of your little TV villains, Judge," she snapped. Judy leaned forward slightly. "You're right. You're worse, because you think respect is optional." Karen blinked, momentarily speechless. The camera zoomed in. The audience could sense the tension tightening like a noose. Judy wasn't raising her voice, and she didn't need to. Her authority was in her composure. She tapped her pen once against the bench, eyes never leaving Karen. "You came here asking for justice, but what you really want is control," Judy said. "And control doesn't live here." "Truth does," Karen tried to counter. "I have the right to speak," she began, but Judy cut her off again. "And I have the right to end this case when I've heard enough nonsense." The audience erupted into brief applause before Judy's sharp glance silenced them. The bailiff's eyes flicked between the two women, ready for anything. Karen's posture shifted from confident to cornered, her breathing quickening. Then Judy leaned back, almost relaxed. "Tell me, Ms. Westfield," she said, "how much did you say your lawyer charged you for preparing this case?" Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" Judy repeated it slower this time, her tone dripping with curiosity. "Your lawyer, how much?" Karen hesitated. "I, handled it myself." Judy's eyebrows lifted. "Interesting. So you filed this yourself? Misquoted your own appraisal and exaggerated emotional distress, all without counsel. Do you know what that tells me?" Karen frowned. "That I'm independent?" Judy's smile was razor sharp. "No, that you're reckless," the audience gasped. Judy didn't let up. "And that, Ms. Westfield, is why you're standing here with a case that's falling apart faster than your temper." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. The confidence that had carried her into the courtroom was evaporating under the heat of Judy's precision. "I'm giving you one chance," Judy said finally. "Tell me the truth and the whole truth about why you brought this woman to court, because I already know it's not about a flower garden." Karen's silence was her answer, and that's when Judy's knowing smile returned. Because the real reason, the one hidden in those files, was about to surface next. The moment Judge Judy uttered those words, the courtroom transformed into a pressure cooker. Karen's confidence, already crumbling, finally cracked. Her face flushed crimson, her voice rising as she shouted over Judy. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, slamming her palm on the plaintiff's podium. Judy didn't flinch. She simply leaned back in her chair, hands folded, expression unreadable. The picture of calm authority while chaos unfolded in front of her. The audience sat on the edge of their seats, knowing they were seconds away from seeing the moment that would go viral across the internet. Karen's breathing grew heavy, her words sharp and venomous. "I came here for justice, not to be humiliated by some TV star," she yelled. The insult echoed across the room. The bailiff took a single step forward, but Judy raised her hand again, signaling him to stop. "No," Judy said softly, but her voice carried like thunder. "Let her talk. She's been waiting to hang herself with her own words." The crowd gasped. half horrified, half thrilled. Karen's fury was boiling over, and the silence that followed was more dangerous than any scream. "Go ahead," Judy continued. "Show us who you really are." That line hit Karen like a spark to gasoline. She tore off one of her heels, waving it in the air. "You think you're better than everyone," she shouted, voice shaking with rage. "You think you can sit there and judge people's lives when you don't know anything about us." The heel slipped from her grip. Or maybe she threw it. Either way, it flew across the courtroom, spinning once before slamming into the side of Judy's bench. The sound was deafening. The audience gasped as if they had all been struck. The bailiff lunged forward, and for the first time in the show's long history, even the cameramen froze. Karen stumbled backward, realizing too late what she had done. Judy didn't move. Not a muscle. Her gaze was locked on Karen, the way a storm studies the sea before it strikes. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable, until Judy finally spoke. "Ms. Westfield," she said evenly, her voice colder than marble, "you just crossed a line that no one in my courtroom has ever crossed, and you'll find out what that means in 30 seconds. The air seemed to freeze. Karen's defiance melted into dread, her lips parting but no sound coming out. Judy slowly turned toward the bailiff. "Step back," she ordered. "She's about to learn the meaning of regret." The audience didn't breathe. The camera zoomed in on Judy's face, capturing the moment before impact. The quiet before. The verdict that would become the most unforgettable takedown in courtroom history. The countdown to Karen's regret had officially begun. Judge Judy's stare could have frozen fire. The courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and Karen's shallow, trembling breaths. The heel lay on the floor, a symbol of the arrogance that had finally collapsed under its own weight. Judy leaned forward slightly, her tone still calm but sharp enough to cut through stone. "Pick it up," she said quietly. Karen hesitated, her pride fighting her fear. "I said pick it up, Ms. Westfield." The authority in Judy's voice left no room for argument. Karen bent down, her movement slow, and retrieved the heel like a child caught doing something unforgivable. "Now," Judy continued, her gaze never wavering, "do you know what you've just done?" Karen's lips trembled. "I didn't mean—" Judy raised a finger. "You did. You meant every second of it, because women like you don't explode from misunderstanding. You explode when the truth finally corners you." The audience murmured in awe, hanging on every word. Judy didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her composure was far more terrifying. "You came in here thinking this court was your stage. You wanted to perform, to intimidate, to control. But I warned you from the start. Control doesn't live here. Truth does." Karen tried to interrupt, her voice weak. "You don't understand what she did to me." "Enough!" Judy's voice cracked like thunder, silencing her. "I've read every document, every statement, and every message you sent that neighbor you bullied. You want to know the secret I've been holding back?" Karen froze. Judy reached down, pulled out a thin manila folder and held it up. "This," she said, tapping the folder, "is a copy of your text messages. The ones you sent calling her a charity case and threatening to make her cry in court. Does that sound like someone who came here for justice?" The color drained from Karen's face. Where did you get those?" she stammered. Judy's eyes flicked toward the camera. "From the defendant's attorney, who came prepared. Unlike you." The audience erupted into gasps, phones rising into the air as people whispered and recorded reactions. Judy didn't break her gaze. "This isn't a TV moment, Ms. Westfield. This is accountability. You lied on record, and you did it with pride." Karen shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "I just wanted—" Judy cut in coldly. "You wanted to win. Even if it meant humiliating an innocent woman. And now you've humiliated yourself instead." The crowd's silence was electric, the kind that follows a lightning strike. Even the bailiff looked stunned. Judy's tone softened just slightly, but the precision remained. "You think this moment defines me? It doesn't. It defines you." Karen covered her face with one hand, whispering through tears, "I'm sorry." Judy nodded once. "No, you're not yet, but you will be." She lifted her gavel, tapping it once on the bench. "This case is dismissed. You owe the defendant nothing, except an apology you're clearly not ready to give." The sound of the gavel was final, heavy with meaning. Karen stood there, frozen, as the audience slowly began to applaud. Not mockingly, but with relief. The kind of applause that comes when justice feels personal. Judy leaned forward one last time. Here's what you should take from this, Ms. Westfield. Money can buy you a lawyer, a wardrobe, maybe even attention. But it can't buy you class. That's something you earn, by how you treat people. Karen lowered her gaze, the words hitting harder than any punishment. The cameras zoomed in on her tear-streaked face, the very image of public regret. The clip of that moment, the thrown heel, the gavel strike, Judy's final line, would explode across the internet within hours. Hashtags trended, reactions flooded in, and millions replayed the moment just to watch that one calm, devastating takedown again. One tweet read, "Judge Judy didn't yell, she destroyed her with elegance." Another said, "That's not a courtroom, that's a lesson." As the audience continued to applaud, Judy gave one final glance to the cameras, her tone steady and instructive. "And that's why," she said, "no matter how loud arrogance screams, truth always gets the last word." Before we continue to the shocking aftermath, what happened to Karen after this viral humiliation, hit that like button if you believe Judge Judy handled this perfectly. Because what comes next will show that her regret didn't stop when the cameras did. Stay tuned. The gavel's echo lingered like thunder fading in the distance. The courtroom audience was still buzzing, whispering in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Cameras caught every expression: Judy's unflinching composure, the defendant's tears of relief, and Karen's silent collapse. The heel that had started it all lay forgotten on the floor, symbolic of a pride that had been broken in front of millions. Karen didn't storm out this time. She stayed standing, trembling, face pale as her own humiliation settled like a shadow she couldn't escape. Judy's bailiff leaned in quietly, asking if she wanted the plaintiff escorted out, but Judy shook her head. "No," she said calmly. "She's already learned more than I could ever teach her." Those words weren't for Karen alone. They were for everyone watching. The audience clapped softly, some out of respect, others out of cathartic release. Even the defendant, Teresa, looked toward Karen with a mixture of pity and closure. "I forgive you," Teresa said gently, voice shaking but sincere. The cameras caught it, and that moment became the emotional centerpiece of every online clip that followed. Karen turned to her, eyes red, voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Teresa nodded. But it did. Her simple response carried more power than any verdict. Judy watched the exchange, expression softening for just a second, then turned her attention to the court clerk. "Next case," she said, voice steady, as if she hadn't just orchestrated one of the most unforgettable moments in courtroom television history. Outside the courtroom, the world reacted instantly. Clips of the heel-throwing incident flooded social media, gaining millions of views within hours. Some called it the most shocking outburst in Judge Judy history. Others called it poetic justice. Headlines read, "Judge Judy destroys entitled plaintiff with one sentence." Even late-night talk shows picked it up, replaying Judy's calm takedown as an example of the power of composure in chaos. But while the internet laughed and applauded, Karen's reality was far from over. Within days, she lost her job at a luxury real estate firm. Clients began canceling meetings, and her name became synonymous with arrogance. In interviews, she refused to attend, statements she declined to give. The silence spoke volumes. People who once admired her confidence now whispered about her downfall. The woman who had walked into the courtroom thinking she could control everything had lost the one thing she couldn't buy back: dignity. That night, in her empty restaurant, she sat alone at a corner booth with the lights off, staring at the closed sign on the door. The sound of a fryer cooling filled the silence, and for the first time in years, Karen Matthews didn't feel powerful. She felt human. By the next morning, Judge Judy's courtroom had turned into the most talked-about place on the internet. The clip of Karen's meltdown, the slow motion of the burger flying through the air, and Judy's line, "You didn't lose your temper, you lost your humanity," were being replayed on every news channel. Memes spread across TikTok, reaction videos flooded YouTube, and late-night hosts turned Karen's name into a national punchline. But beneath the laughter was something deeper. People weren't just mocking Karen. They were admiring Judy's calm. That moment became a mirror for millions who had faced bullies, narcissists, or bosses who thought money meant superiority. "This," one comment read under the viral video, "is what accountability looks like." Outside the courthouse, crowds began gathering. Some held signs that read, "Justice has flavor." Others brought burgers wrapped in foil, tossing them jokingly into trash cans labeled "For Karen." Reporters swarmed every exit, hoping for another outburst. But Karen never showed. In her downtown restaurant, the once buzzing kitchen had fallen silent. The cook quit that morning. Her manager stopped answering calls. Online reviews tanked to 1 star. People wrote things like, "Respect tastes better than burgers." By evening, the entire chain's website was down. Alicia, meanwhile, had become an accidental symbol of dignity. Donations poured into her GoFundMe. She got job offers, interview requests, and messages from people saying her story gave them courage to stand up to their own Karens. When asked how she felt, she told one reporter quietly, "I'm just grateful someone finally listened." Judge Judy didn't comment publicly. She didn't need to. Her verdict was replaying across millions of screens, her calm authority speaking louder than any press release ever could. Every network called it the most composed moment in TV history. Producers even discussed turning it into a documentary about pride, justice, and public redemption. But inside her dimly lit restaurant, Karen Matthews sat alone at a booth, the blinds closed. The sign flipped to permanently closed. The laughter from the internet didn't reach her there. All she heard was the low hum of a refrigerator and the memory of Judy's voice echoing in her mind. Power doesn't come from control. It comes from respect. She replayed that moment again and again, seeing her hand lift, the burger fly, the silence that followed. It wasn't the burger that ruined her. It was what it symbolized. The years of pride, superiority, and denial she had built her name on. Now it had all fallen apart in front of the world. That night, she opened her laptop, scrolling through thousands of comments. Some were cruel, but others, surprisingly, weren't. One said, "Karen, if you're reading this, people make mistakes. What matters is what you do next." Another wrote, "Apologize, rebuild, and prove you learned." For the first time in years, Karen didn't feel defiant. She felt small but not broken. Somewhere inside her, beneath the layers of anger, a quiet realization began to take root. Maybe Judge Judy hadn't destroyed her life. Maybe she'd saved it. Weeks later, the story still lived online, but the tone had shifted. The outrage had burned itself out, replaced by reflection. News outlets were now running think pieces titled, "The Day. Judge Judy taught America about respect." And "From Pride to Humility. The Karen Matthews lesson." Karen finally agreed to appear on a local morning show, not to defend herself but to apologize. She sat on the couch, hands folded, her tone quieter than anyone had ever heard. "I made a fool of myself," she said softly. "But I also learned that arrogance isn't strength. It's fear pretending to be power." The host asked what she would say to Judge Judy if given the chance. Karen looked into the camera. "I'd say thank you, because no one else could have stopped me from becoming worse than I already was." That clip went viral again, but this time, not out of mockery. People saw something different. A woman who had finally looked in the mirror. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it reminded viewers that humility can follow even the loudest humiliation. Alicia watched the interview from home. She smiled faintly, whispering, "That's all I wanted." Then she turned off the TV and went back to making breakfast for her kids. In the courtroom weeks later, Judy returned to business as usual. A producer mentioned how the clip had become one of the most viewed moments in her show's history. Judy just shrugged. "It's not about views," she said. "It's about lessons." She wasn't wrong. Across the internet, schools, workplaces, and even therapy sessions used the clip as a reference point for emotional control and respect. It wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was education. As for Karen, she quietly sold her restaurant chain, paid every fine, and began volunteering at a local food bank. People didn't always recognize her, but those who did said she was different, slower to speak, quicker to listen. One afternoon, a reporter asked why she was doing it. Karen smiled gently. "Because you can't feed others if you're still starving for validation." Months later, a letter arrived at the courthouse. It was addressed to Judge Judy. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Your Honor, you were right. Power without respect is nothing. I threw a burger that day, but what I really threw away was my dignity. I'm trying to earn it back one honest day at a time. Karen Matthews." Judy read it silently, folded it once, and placed it in her drawer without a word. She didn't need to reply. The silence was enough. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Judy paused outside the courthouse, looking at the faint glow of the setting light. For once, she smiled. "Sometimes," she murmured to herself, "the verdict doesn't end in court. It begins there." If this story reminded you that respect costs nothing but means everything, subscribe right now and comment "Real Justice" below. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more truth, more humility, and more Judge Judy moments like this.